Quarterbacks, and more quarterbacks. That's going to be the talk for the Pittsburgh Steelers and their fans pretty much all going into next season, whether they try to bring back Ben Roethlisberger, whether they try to go trade for a veteran, they sign a veteran in free agency, or they draft a quarterback. That's going to be the discussion. Joining me is a beloved quarterback expert, someone that you guys know, trust, and listen to all the time if you're a fan of the Locked On Steelers podcast. That's Tony Serino. He's back on the show. He's going to give us his thoughts on who should be the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I promise you, if he says Devlin Hodges, I will reach through the screen and punch him in the face. But all violence aside, we're happy to have Tony back on the show. I'm Chris Carter of the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things on the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find this show on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, and YouTube. Remember, if you're watching this on YouTube, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button to our channel to get all our Monday through Friday shows, breaking down your Pittsburgh Steelers. Rejoining me is Tony Serino. It's not a Tony Tuesday. It's not a Tony Wednesday either, unfortunately, this week after what happened Sunday. But we're happy to have my compadre, my colleague, my friend, Tony Serino, back on the Locked On Steelers podcast. What up, Tony?
Oh, happy to be here, representing my boy Duck. I'm happy to hear you refer to me as a quarterback expert.
Yes.
I'm ready to talk quarterback today, and we talk about the future of the Steelers at quarterback. I got a couple names to throw in the ring. I'll try to leave Duck out. Look, everything. I just want to just preface everything we say today with, obviously, if Duck is available, he's the guy. Duh. Right? So we're going to try and leave that aside. It's just implied in every conversation we have today. If Duck were available, the Steelers should absolutely sign him. But we're going to go within this conversation and say he's not available. So who else could they get? Right? In that case, okay, well, if Duck's not available, should they look at Aaron Rodgers? Yeah, probably. But anyway.
Okay. Now, we have to let people in on the inside joke, because if you're just tuning in on YouTube and you're like, what is this? What is happening here? Mm-hmm. You're probably like, why is this guy talking about a Duck or Devlin Hodges? If you don't know, he's talking about Tony. Show them your hat so they put it up to the screen.
We got a little Duck Hodges hunting club.
Okay, it's just this man has been irrational about Devlin Hodges since the moment he stepped foot on the practice fields of Latrobe in Pennsylvania. What was it, 3 years ago now, 2 years ago?
Some would call it irrational. Others would call it very, very rational. But,
we used to do this show together from Tony's car, recording.
Yes.
And every day for training camp, he would say something to the effect of that Devlin Hodges.
It started as a joke at the end of a podcast of just like, who do you think? Like our hot take of the day after one day of camp. And yeah, I mentioned that Devlin Hodges might make the team. And it just, my goodness, Chris, it has spiraled out of control ever since.
Yeah, it's gone insane. And then he comes back and he plays and he wins games for the Steelers and just all the things. But,
now, it's just crazy. It's crazy.
Okay. Stop it. See, I just said I don't want to have violence on the show. But let's talk about the actual quarterback situation. Now, Ben Roethlisberger, of course, looking rough in his final years. But you want to see Ben Roethlisberger go out on his own terms. You want to see him go out with a win over Cleveland. It would be crazy to think that after owning Cleveland for all of his career, that if the Steelers, and I'm not wishing this upon them, but it is possible that if the Steelers lose this weekend, they'd be eliminated from the playoffs. That means the Browns would have basically ended the Steelers' season and Ben Roethlisberger's season in back-to-back years at Heinz Field. That's a nightmare scenario for Ben. I think it's this kind of redemption that he came back to get after the way last year finished.
It is, but I'm reminded of the movie, Chris, Final Destination.
What?
You can't cheat death. It is something I've certainly thought about for the last 2 weeks, ever since the schedule kind of played itself out in such a way that it did seem like this Cleveland game was going to be win or bust. Ben Roethlisberger in Heinz Field in a primetime national game against the Cleveland Browns. Last year, every Steeler fan watched Ben Roethlisberger crying on the sideline next to Marquise Pouncey and thought, wow, Ben's going to retire. Oof. He's going to retire.
Yeah.
And his last game is going to be an embarrassing loss to the Cleveland Browns in front of in a national TV audience. right? And then he says he's going to come back, and then they beat the Browns this year, and it feels like, wow, maybe there is going to be this redemption story. But now, here we are. It does feel a little Final Destination-y, doesn't it? It's a little bit like, well, if the football gods wanted you to go out, Ben, by losing to Cleveland, here we go. Here we go. He's certainly going to get his chance to do so.
This is his
my
chance.
worry this week.
It's definitely a worry for Steelers fans because it would be some serious crow to have to eat. But let's talk about what the Steelers offense has been with Ben Roethlisberger. This show is gonna be strictly focusing on the quarterback position because, as we said, Tony and I have talked a lot about the quarterback position over the years and the prospect of keeping Ben for a long time. Again, this is 3 years ago. Leading up to this point, and the process of finding whether it's going to be an heir in the coming years or a bridge quarterback next year, whatever the process is. But Tony, and I was talking with Adam Bittner about this on yesterday's podcast, but you look at what the Steelers, have been trying to do on offense. A lot of it has been trying to force defenses into guessing games with the RPO looks. And the RPO, when it's potentially Najee Harris, okay, that's one thing. But the RPO often does need a more athletic quarterback than Ben Roethlisberger. Again, not a scrambler, not a speedster, just a guy who can kind of do what Mason Rudolph did with the one scramble that he had at the end of the game when he broke the pocket and was able to get like 20 yards on a run. But just being able to do that, and Ben can't do that. Is the entire idea here that the Steelers should look for settle with a quarterback that is able to do that, or should the Steelers really be looking for like, hey, you know what? We need to completely reinvest in a quarterback that can just sling it and just come up with a whole new system based around finding this new guy.
No, it does seem like Mike Tomlin has a type. I think his obsession in press conferences this year with talking about mobile quarterbacks and how a mobile quarterback is able to stretch a defense and all the things that you have to do as a defense to defend, not just the passing, but the rushing of these mobile guys, I think is something that Mike Tomlin is definitely intrigued by. And I think as we start to project into 2022, who are the Steelers going to be? Who are the realistic targets? I think you have to factor mobility in. Now, that's not to say that a guy like Aaron Rodgers is, we're just going to, that Mike Tomlin's going to say, no, I don't want Aaron because, he's not a traditionally mobile quarterback. But I do think it's going to factor definitely in. And I think, look, the thing about the quarterback in 2022, Ben Roethlisberger this year is so limited, not just in his mobility, but obviously arm strength is an issue. Now, he can still throw the deep ball, but how fast it gets there is clearly, it's clearly, not what it used to be. He just doesn't want to throw over the middle. I mean, teams that, the Chiefs this week just sat in too high the entire game. Yep. So you want to try and beat us underneath? Cool, man. Like, go do that. Good luck. Good. You're not going to run the ball. So, all the limitations of Ben have kind of come, they've kind of built up to the point where, defenses have a relatively, let's be honest here. The defenses have a relatively easy time defending this Pittsburgh Steelers offense and what they want to do. And so adding a quarterback that has that extra, the extra little bit of mobility, I think is going to be a big part of what the Steelers look for in 22.
It needs to be a part of what they look for. And it's not the sole thing. It's not like just like, oh, that's the answer, and all of a sudden they'll be back to being 12-4, guys. Right. That's not what we're saying here. But we are saying we are pointing out how this is a team that when you look at what they have available to them, they do have playmakers on offense. It's not like they'd be going into next season with zero guys who can create on their own and zero guys who can help a quarterback out. They do need to invest in the offensive line. I want to talk about the synergy and just how that's going to relate to whoever they get at the quarterback position in the next segment. We'll do that in just a second here. But first, I got to tell you guys about Built Bar. This holiday season, grab the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar or even better than a candy bar. Built Bar is filled with so much holiday goodness, rich with decadent flavor, covered in chocolate, and amazingly low in calories, low in sugar, low in net carbs, low in fat, but high in protein. That's the best of both worlds. Delicious and healthy. There's so many flavors that you'll have a hard time choosing if you want raspberry, mint brownie, cherry, double chocolate, cookies and cream, peanut butter brownie, all those available, and so many more at built.com. Go there today to find your favorite flavor. With now the holidays over, if you want to cozy up with something warm, here's a holiday secret. Dip your Built Bar into a piping hot cup of cocoa. Let it melt for a little bit. Give your beverage that little bit of Built Bar flavor. Plus, you'll have a nice melty Built Bar to go with it. Just be sure to have a couple napkins on hand. But trust me, I've done it once or twice now. It's a really good idea, especially with the cookies and cream flavor. That's my jam right there. Cookies and cream in the hot cocoa. That's a nice holiday treat right there. But go to built.com to get your holiday treat from Built Bar. Again, use promo code LOCKED15. That's LOCKED15, LOCKED15 for your next order at built.com, and you'll get 15% order. Again, that's all capital letters, all one word, LOCKED15, LOCKED15 for 15% off your next order at built.com. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm Chris Carter here with Tony Serino for a Tony Wednesday on the Locked On Steelers podcast. We thank you for making us your first listen every day. But Tony, let's get into looking at the Steelers offensive line situation, because that's something else that I talked about with Adam Bittner. It is imperative, at least in my opinion, that whatever the Steelers do at quarterback next season, they need to invest into the offensive line. And you thought we talked about it leading into the draft. You and I were saying, hey, look at offensive line early. You and I, the night of the draft, we were both like, man, Creed Humphrey would have been the move in the second round. And
yep.
And right now, it looks like he would have been the move in the second round, because but again, it's tough to say that because he was the third center drafted at that point. It's not like he was everyone's pick, but he was certainly someone that everyone was excited, that we were excited about, and that there were some people excited about. But this time around, you're going to have a situation where you either need a quarterback or you need to invest in the offensive line. My thing is this, Tony. You're looking at an option between free agency and the draft for both. Free agency, as always, comes before the draft, which gives you a chance to say, hey, these are the parameters we're going to set up for ourselves in the draft. These are the playmakers we invested in. I think that the Steelers are in a unique position because there's some people, and I've talked about on this show with Doug Whaley, a former Steelers front office guy and a former GM of the Buffalo Bills. He was telling me how he thinks the move is to get an Aaron Rodgers or a Russell Wilson. But if you do that, you go right back to handicapping your salary cap with a heavy quarterback when you need to redevelop players. Me thinking this means the offensive line needs to take priority. And unless you get like a fanciful trade and someone just trying to get rid of a quarterback and you get something that works to your advantage, it might just be worth, hey, get the cheaper quarterback in free agency and draft a quarterback. And that way it's like, hey, you're giving yourself either Mason Rudolph, the guy you signed in free agency, or this young kid or this young rookie, to see who works the best. And either way, you've taken the rest of that money and the rest of your picks to invest in that offensive line and build around that.
Yeah, I mean, look, the Steelers are going to have a lot of money to play with next year, and it's going to be interesting to see how they spread that around. I mean, look, offensive linemen aren't coming cheap these days either, especially the best ones, right? I mean, look, the Steelers got a firsthand look at how the offensive line can be rebuilt and rebuilt quickly, right? Remember how bad that Chiefs offensive line was in that Super Bowl? Now, that was obviously very, very hurt, right? I mean, so there were guys that just didn't play in that game. They were injured. But there was a basically retooled back to front offensive line in Kansas City. But how did they do that? Well, they traded away, was it a first round pick was it a second? No, it was a first and something else for Orlando Brown.
Yeah.
The Chiefs traded that away. They then paid $16 million a year to go get Joe Thuney. And then they took a couple offensive linemen who both worked out, right? I mean, look, the Creed Humphrey was a second round pick.
Yeah.
And he looks like, he's probably going to end up finishing second, maybe third for offensive rookie of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And they got the guard from, I want to say it was from Tennessee.
Yeah.
So yeah. So look, the Kansas City did this in both ways, right? They went out and they got the big free agency, right? They got a couple big vets, and they went and got the nice draft picks, and then rebuilt that thing all in 1 year. The problem for the Steelers is that it just didn't work out for them when it comes to the draft picks, right? I think today you look at guys like Kendrick Green and you look at Dan Moore, who are in that same draft class, right? A third and a fourth round pick. That I believe the Chiefs took a second and a fifth for their two guys. Their two guys worked out really, really well. The Steelers did not. I mean, at this point, I think Kendrick Green is an open question as to whether or not he's going to be penciled in as the starter going in. And the same can probably be said for Dan Moore at that left tackle spot. So I'm with you. I think the Steelers have to go out and spend money in free agency because you can't come into next season with the same open questions about young guys and whether they're going to translate at that position.
No, yeah, you need veterans, and there are veterans out there at different positions. And some of these veterans, they're up there in their early 30s. But I look at guys who are going to be available in free agency next year. At least they're unrestricted free agents going into next season, as we have made this show. Brandon Scherf, a guard for Washington right now. Teron Armstead, he's on a void contract with the Saints, but he'll be 31. You look at Andrew Norwell for the Jaguars, Eric Fisher for the Colts, a former first overall pick. And again, these guys aren't guys that'll light it up, but they'll say, hey, we're veteran offensive linemen. We can provide some stability to this offensive line. And then this allows to say, hey, you know what? We get a couple of these guys, we lock in and we say, these are the positions that we've addressed. Then you could focus on either center, because I look around at the centers that are available, and again, this is very early. Free agency isn't even close to starting. Teams are going to do cuts, and then that's going to open up opportunities. And again, it's going to be the biggest spending era in the history of free agency with the way that the salary cap is about to boom. So who knows how free agency is about to work in this coming season, Tony? But I look at the opportunities at center. The move might be to just stick to that in the draft, and that's another position where if you're not too high on quarterback, the guy that everyone's looking at at center is Tyler Lindenbaum. And that puts you in a position where if you commit to him or you commit to a center high in this upcoming NFL draft, and then you sign, a guard and a tackle in free agency, maybe you're in a position where, your offensive line takes a decent step forward. And next year you're working with sort of a game manager quarterback, and, you'll have Deontay Johnson, you'll have Pat Freiermuth, you'll have Najee Harris. Maybe you can make something work out of that group while you're also reinvesting in the defense to make them a top tier unit again.
Yeah, I wonder though. I mean, it's likely going to take a first round pick to get the kid from Iowa, right? So
absolutely, if you get that kid from Iowa, you're throwing away any chance to get one of the upper picks in the quarterback class. But again, this quarterback class is weird. It's not your traditional. There's a Trevor Lawrence.
This quarterback class is bad. It's just not a good class. I'm more wondering from a meta perspective of would the Steelers take center 2 years in a row, once in the third round, and then just dip their toe right back in, but this time in the first round to do the exact same thing. Not to say that they shouldn't, right? I mean, again, I think Kendrick Green has massive questions about his game.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not something that they shouldn't do. I just wonder if they would do something like that from a look standpoint.
Right, because then pride comes into the point. And it's like are we bailing on this pick? But again, I think Kendrick Green has shown you, even if someday he finds a way to become a center, you need to have a backup plan in case it doesn't. And it really needs to become your forefront plan, and he becomes the backup plan because he's showing you he's not getting used to the center position in the NFL anytime soon. He's going to probably have 2 more rough weeks if he even plays these next 2 weeks, with how he played in these last few games. But you look at that opportunity there is that you invest in that, and then maybe you kick him to guard. Maybe he figures out things that was his natural position in college. Maybe he doesn't have to communicate and worry about all the things that a center has to worry about. Maybe he finds himself again there, and then he becomes a better NFL player. But I mean, the rate that he is right now, he's not even a coherent line. He's not a competent lineman. And when you look at him right now, and I know Deontay Johnson was just on a Steelers Zoom on Monday saying, "Stop talking about the offensive line."
Chris, if you're not going to suit up, man, we got to cancel the whole segment.
I feel the frustration for players when they say, because if you don't know what I'm talking about, Deontay Johnson basically said, for all the people criticizing the offensive line, why don't you go out there and do it? And it was kind of one of those situations like, Deontay, nobody's saying that they're going to go out and lace them up and knock some heads with at the lineman position, but it's obviously bad. But I also feel the frustration because the way that fans can come at players online. I think it was Drew Hannes, a Steelers fan who tweets a lot of good stuff. I think he was the one that would say, "Hey guys, stop attacking players online. It's just not cool." Yeah. That's where I think that frustration is coming from, is that when you're losing, it's one thing, but when you're losing and people are calling you outside of your name, and people are saying all these ridiculous things, and they're saying very offensive things online, that can wear down on you. I think Deontay Johnson had a breakdown moment. But about this offensive line again, I'm with you that you're in a position where if you invest in, if you want to reach for Tyler Lindenbaum, you might even have to even trade up to get him. Yeah. And that could be costly, but you need to get pieces that are going to solidify this offensive line. Are you a guy, Tony, when you look at just how things have been, do you try to get those veterans and make that a priority? Or are you looking at more so? It's like, hey, you know what? Let's go get that quarterback somewhere.
No, I think it's the biggest problem of this season is that you have so many positions where you have to you feel like you have to add at least you have to add competition, right? You can't go into next season and just say, well, Dan Moore, pencil him in like he is the left tackle, and we'll see what we do from there. It's almost to the point, Chris, where I feel like when we talk about starting to add some talent in free agency, Chooks is a free agent this offseason.
Yeah,
I almost feel like if you can get him back, like not to say Chooks,
who's going to pay a lot for him,
right? But you just kind of like, hasn't he been the best offensive lineman for the Steelers? Not saying that he's been good.
Not saying much.
Not saying much, but he's been the most reliable player on that offensive line so far. And you certainly, if you're looking at, you need a new left tackle, you need a new center, you need a new right guard. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now Dotson, when he comes back, we'll see. But boy, oh boy, I mean, you're gonna start over at right tackle as well, because I mean, there's just too many positions to try and rebuild in one season. So no, I think you have to add vets. And again, it's not just on the offensive line. I mean, there's so many positions. I mean, even I think inside linebacker is a spot that the Steelers need to invest in again next year, just from a competition standpoint. Not giving up on Devin Bush yet, but you just got to add players, right? You just got to add competition for these young guys, just to make sure that the Tomlin thing, two dogs, one bone, right? You want to make sure these guys are playing at the top of their game.
Would also put cornerback in that consideration.
Oh yeah,
with Cam Sutton, and sure, you liked what Ahkello Witherspoon has done in the later part of the season, and in limited snaps. But Joe Hayden, whether he comes back is a question. But also, I mean, Justin Lane obviously hasn't worked out. The James Pierre hype train has taken a bit of a hit as of late. So, cornerbacks, like, there's a lot of places to
wide receiver. You probably need to add a wide receiver.
I mean, do they sign Juju back? Will he get a contract somewhere else? There's a lot of questions there. But that's the thing. If you're investing high in some positions, you're going to have to invest low in other. But granted, they'll be able to invest higher in more positions this year than they ever have, I think, in the Mike Tomlin, maybe even in the Kevin Colbert era, because they just haven't had this kind of money in free agency. Yeah, they have those cash opportunities. And speaking of cash opportunities, Chukwuma Okorafor, the contract this year, he was $851,000 this year. So, like, if you can get him for a couple mil, you ain't mad about that. And he might not be either, because that means that he's still on a roster and he's getting paid. But I want to talk to Tony more about the quarterback position. We talked a little about the offensive line and important reinvesting that to help the quarterback. But who should they get? We'll talk about that right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast right after this. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm Chris Carter here with Tony Serino, talking things, all things Steelers, and of course, looking back at the quarterbacks. Now, we talk about the offensive line and building around whoever they get, whether it's a mobile quarterback, a rookie quarterback, a veteran quarterback. There needs to be help there.
Yeah. Whoever it is, whoever it could be.
I say, Tony. Now, I warned you before the show. if you try to make Devin Hodges a legitimate option for the Steelers, I was going to reach through the screen.
The only option. But obviously, look, not everything is realistic, so we want to keep this. Like I said at the beginning, we're gonna do this segment knowing that Duck is the number one option, and then these are everyone we're talking about here is the number two.
Okay, I'm going to calm myself, and I'm going to be looking at realistic options here. Okay, guys that could happen for the Steelers. And one thing I want to remind you, when you go and you look up at Spot Rack or overthecap.com or anywhere that has free agents and you find your list, the list of quarterbacks there is going to look rough, because you're going to be like, oh man, but you got to remember the quarterback carousel that happened last year. Matt Stafford became a Ram, Jared Goff became a Lion, Carson Wentz became a Colt. All sorts of moves were put around, and people were flipping all over the field, or all over the league. So really committing, thinking that this is just the set field, I think is the mistake here. But the bottom line is, when you look at the guys who are unrestricted free agents next season, it doesn't inspire a whole lot of confidence to make moves. You see bridge quarterbacks like Teddy Bridgewater, Andy Dalton, Jameis Winston, Tyrod Taylor, Jacoby Brissett, Marcus Mariota. Now I look at those names and I don't see anyone that jumps off the page and says, "Ooh, yes, just slap him in and everything will be fine." But Tony, are there guys out there that the Steelers should be considering as like, hey, these are the cheap options to come in and at least be competent and hold the fort and game manage?
I think the two guys from the list you mentioned, Jameis Winston, makes some sense. Although he's coming off of like a, what is it? It's like a catastrophic knee injury that he had, right?
He's had rough injury year on top of everything else that's happened.
Yeah. So that's a tough one to come back from. Mariota, just from like everything we've talked about as far as like the mobile quarterback thing, like Mariota, he checks all the boxes, even if it would be a very uninspiring signing. There's one guy out there, Chris, from the free agency. But before we start getting into crazy trades, there's one guy out there that I'm ready to go all in. No more Duck. I'm dropping the Duck meme, and we're all in on this kid if the Steelers were to get him. And I do think he checks the boxes. Look, you want to talk about a veteran guy? This guy's been to the playoffs not once, but twice. Is he mobile? Is he mobile? He's mobile enough. He's average. I believe he has an average yards per carry of over 5. Okay, so he's relatively mobile. And this is a guy who's dragged a bad coach to the playoffs. Not once, but twice.
We talking about Derek Carr?
No. We're talking about a better quarterback than Derek Carr.
Okay.
My dog. Listen, Kevin Colbert has this obsession with Sam Howell, a North Carolina quarterback. Okay, listen, I got news for you, Kevin. You don't have to go out in the draft and waste draft capital on a quarterback like that. You can go in free agency and get the better North Carolina quarterback. I'm talking about my dog, Mitchell Trubisky. Let's get him in black and gold. Let's get Mitch in there. Here's the thing about Mitch. You look back at his his Bears career and you say, this guy was terrible. He was out, Tony. He was outright awful. Well, look at what Matt Nagy is doing to Justin Fields. Justin Fields, who we know is a good quarterback. Okay, but Justin Fields is being ruined by Matt Nagy.
Agreed. He is. Justin Fields is being ruined.
He's being ruined.
I'm going to just skip past the rest of what you said.
I'm making too much sense for you here, Chris, because we're talking about Mitchell Trubisky, who dragged Matt Nagy to the playoffs twice. Would have won a playoff game for a double doink. Okay, get this. I mean, you could probably get Mitch next year for $10 million a year. I mean, $10 million a year might actually. I think this year he signed for like $2 million. So I'm all in. There's one more guy I'm actually all in on, and everyone knows who that is, but it's not Duck. But as far as realistic options, sign me up for Mitchell Trubisky. Let's go.
What just happened? I don't listen. If you were listening to all of that and you were wondering why isn't Chris just jumping in? If you were watching on YouTube, you see I just put my face. I just face palmed.
No, it makes too much sense. Chris is actually he's coming to terms with the fact that he 100% agrees with me on this one, which is
that's not what
together.
Putting my hand in my face and just shaking my head means. It's not at all what it means. That's the complete opposite of the body language thing.
So you're not all in on Mitchell?
No, I'm not all in on Mitchell.
Right. Well,
what are we saying here? Oh man.
Would you like a good trade option? Would you actually not even a trade option? This guy could get cut because I think this team is probably going to be in the market for a quarterback. How about the Matt Corrals of the world?
Okay. I
think the Atlanta Falcons may be in the market for a new quarterback.
Don't you start this.
And my dog Matty Ice.
Don't you start this again.
Come on. Listen, you want a guy who's been better than Ben Roethlisberger?
Oh, here we go.
You want a guy who's been better than Ben for the last couple of years? Not saying he's great, but an upgrade for sure.
Listen, I will call Miss Ye, and she will come and get you. Now, for those guys, again, we gotta open the door a bit and show the inside jokes here. Years ago, back before that training camp that I told you, where Tony was just loving Duck Hodges, in the shows leading up to that, he told me that Matt Ryan was a better quarterback than Ben Roethlisberger, and I was like, get out of here! Like we argued about this
2019 specifically, but okay, or 2018. 2018
it was in 2018 specifically, and I just told him to get out. Just go. I don't like you anymore. We argue about this for weeks. And so one of our great fans of the show, Miss Ye, she's been a very wonderful supporter. We appreciate her anytime that she contributes to the show and comments on our Facebook page. By the way, join the Locked On Steelers Facebook page. We out there. But Miss Ye comes on and she finds me at training camp and she hugs me and she's like, I love your show. And I'm like, oh, it's so great to meet you. I've seen you comment. We appreciate you. And the first thing she says to me after that is, where's Tony? Because I got something to tell him if he want to think that Matt Ryan's better than Big Ben. And I was like, oh snap! And Tony came and he was wearing a red shirt for Matt Ryan that day.
Yeah, for my boy. Got to support my dog. Or was it for Mitchell Trubisky, who would end up on the Bills in red and then future Steeler?
You're too much, man. You're too much. But
can I throw one more? Can I derail this with one more quarterback possibility for the Steelers?
If it's
one
not
that I'm sure Steeler fans will love. love.
Okay, I think I know where you're going with this.
Yeah. You don't have to travel very far from Pittsburgh to get him.
Oh, no. Don't you say it.
Well, he's definitely done in Cleveland. So, listen, we know that
you are saying it.
We know that. Listen, certainly Mike Tomlin has got an up-close look at this kid for the past 4 years.
No.
I don't like it either. I don't like it either. I'm not advocating for it. I'm just saying that we shouldn't rule out the idea.
Oh, no.
That a Baker Mayfield in Pittsburgh.
No.
But think about it this way.
You're in Steeler jail.
I know. This one's going to be really, really. I mean, I would just to see how Steeler fans would react to it. I actually would like to see it because, do you even could you even bring yourself as a fan to cheer for Baker Mayfield? But here's the thing. Here's
lots of Hulu commercials. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, exactly. We're gonna be progressive in Heinz Field. It's gonna be great. Here's the thing though. So Baker Mayfield was supposed to be the savior of the Browns, first overall pick, yada yada, right? Imagine if he did go to Pittsburgh and actually had success. The slap in the face that would be to Cleveland.
This is what you've done to us.
Yeah,
why?
That's right. This is why no one was, everyone, no one's looking forward to life without Ben, and this is why, because these are the options we have. Mitchell Trubisky, Matt Ryan.
Listen. If Baker Mayfield has to come to the Steelers, it's going to be. And what's crazy is, as bad as Ben has been this year, Baker's been worse.
Baker's but he's hurt. But he's hurt. He's hurt.
You see my face. That's what I have to say to that. Oh my goodness. But okay. All that aside, this is why I'm making the argument that maybe even going with a first or second round rookie pick at the quarterback position this year might be the better move, because that guy might only marginally be better or marginally be worse than the guy that you spend maybe $10 million. Like Teddy Bridgewater, he cost like $11.5 million for the Broncos this year. When we consider average money per year. Yeah. Andy Dalton, $10 million. Ryan Fitzpatrick, $10 million. That's money that you can be spending on your offensive line, on your defensive line, on the cornerback position, on inside linebacker, on wherever you choose to spend the money. But if you're not going to get a bona fide solid quarterback, it might even be a mix of things. Yeah, maybe you go get a Mitchell Trubisky, but to have him to compete against Mason Rudolph and whatever rookie quarterback that you draft in the NFL draft. But it might just be hey, we're going with several options. We'll see if any of them work out. If none of them do, we'll revisit this in another year or so. But to me, this team needs a lot more rebuilding, and is when it comes to the whole of the offense, and that investment might just take more time. So that's why I'm saying, kind of spread your odds there, because there's just not a person that you can go all in on right now and just go get, and also get them the help that they would need with the players they do have on offense.
Yeah. It does it makes kind of the dream scenario of a guy like Aaron Rodgers tough, because it's okay, you're going to get Aaron Rodgers. And yes, look, Aaron Rodgers coming in is going to make this team far, far more competitive. And when you look at the fact that this Steelers team has been bad this year, but they've managed their way to 7 wins, what could you do? What could Mike Tomlin and staff do with Aaron Rodgers? Considering what they've done with the lack of talent, as we talked about, all the positions they need to upgrade. So, I mean, I think there is that, but you're right. I mean, this is a team that needs a lot of help in a lot of different areas. And so in that way, putting all your eggs in one basket and saying well, we're just going to get Aaron Rodgers and hope for the best. While that may be a nice short-term, fun experiment, long-term, I think, again, it sets this franchise back, because you're still going to need to invest in the offensive line. You're still going to need to invest in the defensive line and wide receiver and corner and inside linebacker and all the places we talked about. So, it's going to be interesting to watch how Kevin Colbert, how Mike Tomlin and staff address all of this offseason.
It's going to be very interesting. Tony, thank you so much for joining us here in the Locked On Steelers podcast. You're always a treasure here, even if you have the craziest takes in the history of Steelers quarterbacks. But we thank you again for joining us. Let people know we can find you, follow you, and get more of your work.
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Steeler Country. Of course, I'll be on the Facebook group this week. I want to know how many of you are joining me on the Mitchell Trubisky hype train, or are you all in on the Baker Mayfield hype train? Is there even possibility, Chris, that in the Locked On Steelers community there could be a Baker Mayfield hype train? Let's find out. Let's see what happens.
I'm just looking at you with this what have I brought to the show? I'm good. This is going to get the most dislikes on YouTube. This is going to get
they won't. Yeah, you can't. They hide them now. You can't. Who knows?
Oh, that's true. That's true. They do hide the dislikes.
Dislikes. What's that?
Yeah, what is that? But thanks again, Tony. You're always fun to have on the show. We look forward to having you back next week. I'm Chris Carter, the Locked On Steelers podcast. Thanks so much for listening again. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, and YouTube. Hit the like button on our YouTube channel on this video to support us. Subscribe to our YouTube channel for more of our daily content here on Locked On Steelers. Also, if you want to help us out, leave us a 5-star rating with another positive comment on Apple Podcasts, and you'll get a special shout out at the end of the show. Thanks again. We'll be back with more right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast very soon.